a common setup that I see across engineering firms is that you have BIM modelers who control Revit, and you have engineers that provide data that needs to go back into Revit. And that kind of creates a problem with any type of data exchange between those two, which is that the BIM modeler deals with Revit types and company standards, and the engineers may just want to change a value. And the friction here lies within type parameters specifically, where a change that an engineer suggests may mean that the type needs to be split up, and that creates a rather complex operation because we have to adhere to company standards. And to solve this problem, I would suggest the following workflow. So we kind of have two sides of this. One is the side that carries all the complexity, the technical complexity that has to do with how Revit works. And that is all carried by the BIM modeler. And then we have the engineer who has all the actual domain knowledge, but they should not be worried about Revit technicalities, and therefore, for this process, they need simplicity. And in Vyssuals, we can model those two scenarios using the BIM modeler with the local Revit connection and all the power of the canvas. And the engineer just gets a snapshot in a channel that gives them a super easy table interface where they can enter data. So what I would suggest is the following. So let's assume we have a type parameter, and that is the fire rating. And before every snapshot upload, we run one of Vyssuals' graph automations and just copy the values from the fire rating type parameter into an instance parameter that we specifically call target. And then we upload that parameter alongside with the 3D model to the channel, and we tell the engineer to enter their information into that instance parameter so that they can make changes per element without needing to worry about any Revit type structure. Once the engineer is done entering their target values, we load those changes back into the instance parameter in Revit. And then we use another little graph snippet to just perform an equality check and check if the actual type parameter in Revit is equal to the target type parameter. And we color the Revit file according to if that is true or not, which will give us a 3D view that is green and red, where red are marking the mismatches. And then the BIM modeler just works the Revit types with all their knowledge about company standards for as long as it needs for everything to turn green. So with that, you can pretty clearly see that the technical complexity regarding Revit and data management lies within the person that is best suited for that job, and the engineer can focus on providing the values. So let's get into modeling this in the data graph actually and walking through how this works step by step. Let's take doors, for example, and let's pull out the fire rating for the doors. Just quickly check what we're working with. Okay. So we need to make a new parameter in Revit, and that is going to be our target parameter. We can use a project parameter here, that's no problem, because this is just a temporary parameter and is most likely not going to be coupled to any annotations or company standards. It's just for this data exchange here. So we say fire rating target. You can name it anything you like, but I would suggest you do this. And then we say vary by group instance because we want the maximum flexibility here. And let's put it for doors. You can put this for all categories, but that's just fine like this. Say OK. And we can put one value into this here so that Vyssuals picks it up. And there it is. Okay, so now we need to do this little script that copies the values from one parameter to the other one. And for that, we come over to graph nodes. We take a model input. We say we want the doors here, and this could be done on the entire model at once. We take two columns. We take the fire rating, and we take the target fire rating. Let's quickly check how this looks. Okay, so we have the fire ratings here, and we have the target, which is empty. Next, we take a simple formula. We select the output column to be the target, and we just use the quick insert to put the fire rating in there. Check the preview again. See, it's all been copied over. Again, with a graph, this is not yet in the Revit file. The graph does all its transformations without touching the Revit file first, and once you're happy with the changes, you take a create changes node, you select the parameter that you want to make the changes for, you say create changes, gives you this preview here. We write all of this into the Revit file, wait a little bit for everything to refresh. Now we can reset all those change previews here because they've all been successfully pushed into the Revit file. And then just to quickly verify on the Revit file itself, we can see that this one here was empty. Yep, let's take a door that has something in it. Where's that door? We don't know. This one here. This one has one, yes, good. So this one has a fire rating target of NR, not rated, and in the type, the fire rating is NR. So copying all the values into the temporary parameter did succeed. So that was step one. Now we create the table for the engineer that we can give them to enter their fire rating information. And I'll just use this quick button here to make a table for doors. And I'll edit this a little bit and add the target fire rating in here so that we have this here. Now with this set up, I come over to channels. I select a project. I create a channel type versus instance example course that create that channel, and with this table selected I can create a snapshot, call this version 1, and I want only the fire rating target to be editable. Hit publish. It's taking all the geometry, uploading everything, and now we can view the channel. Takes a little bit to load everything up. Okay, and now this is the link that you would send to your engineer. Just quickly make sure that either they are invited into your organization, so they have access to this by default, or you add them as an external member. And then let's pretend we are the engineer. we will make changes here. And we can say this is now 60 minutes. And this one here is 120 minutes. And you can see it's just changing this one cell. And if this was a type parameter for the fire rating, it would affect all the rows. But since this is an instance parameter, we are just affecting this one door. Okay, so then once those changes are in and the engineer is happy with the proposals that they've made, we can say change status, and the engineer will put this to ready for review. Hit save, and then the engineer can close that channel. And now we just refresh this once here. So we're back in the seat of the BIM modeler now. And we can see that there are proposed changes. And in case you lost this table, that is no problem. You just click here and say use this change. You pull those changes into the dashboard. It loads up all the suggestions. And now we just take those suggestions and we write them into the Revit file, because this is a temporary parameter anyway. So we can just blindly take that, put that into the Revit file. So we are ready to do the target comparison next. So I'll clear out those. This table is not really needed anymore, but we can leave it in here. And now we'll build out this comparison graph. We can start by just copying the existing model input, because we'll need pretty much the same here. And we'll take an add columns node, and we'll create a new column in the graph. This is not going to go into Revit. And we'll call that test result. It's going to be text, that's fine. And then we'll take a formula. The output of this formula is going to be put into the test result. And then in here we make a simple if statement and say if the fire rating equals the target rating, then we say OK. Otherwise, we say error. And let's pull out a preview on this one and check. So this is for doors. There's a bunch of empty stuff. And there's, okay, maybe if we switch over to sample mode. So there's in the table preview, there's two modes. You can either take a sample of some %, or you can look at the first n values. And when we switch to the sample one, and maybe also say 90% sample rate. Where is the sum? Where is our, here, there it is. So this is one of the ones that has changed. So to show this colored in the model, we take a group and aggregate node, and we'll group by the test result. And then we can take a table and put the colors onto the model. And this is a typical thing in Revit. You now only see one door in blue, but there's two elements here actually. And if we select it, it's a door opening that appears, which has no visible geometry, so Revit cannot color it. Invisible doors, really cool. Anyway, so if you want to see a few more columns here, you can just add them here. So let's just take those two as well. And here we can clearly see everything matches up. And for the both ones that have an error, we see that here's a problem, or we see how it's not matching up. So how do we fix this now? In here, I suggested that there's a BIM modeler that now adjusts the types. as long as it's not colored the way they want. So we should do that. Let's take this guy here. And this one is supposed to be 120 minutes, and it is currently 90 minutes. So this would probably mean that we need to duplicate this type here. And then make this 120 minute one. And then where is the fire rating here? Here's the fire rating. What? This is why this is supposed to be done by someone who knows Revit and not by the engineers. Okay, let's try again. So I'll duplicate the type. And the fire rating is gone. Wow. Revit, what happens? That is so wild. Okay, well, take that one. Say okay. And now we see that this has now worked. So this is the overall process, how you would resolve this. And a really good illustration why this has to be done by someone who knows Revit.